Good afternoon. Welcome to AgileTD After Work. So today we have Rick Tracy there, and he's going to talk about us. We are the testers. You will be assimilated. So let's see, because we have seen when we publish that in internet, in LinkedIn, that many of you have an opinion and like the things. Let's see his presentation. But first, we welcome Rick. So Rick, welcome.
Hey, thank you.
How are you?
Oh, I was just enjoying the music. I was thinking that was going to go on a little while. I was going to jam a bit.
I can see it again. Wait a second.
Yeah, there we go. We're just going to listen to the music. That's much better, right?
So,
no, I'm just baking in the sun here. It's a heat wave, and we're having a good time with it.
Okay, yeah. So, tell us, who are you?
Well, hi. I'm Rick Tracy. I'm a half American, half Dutch guy living in the Netherlands, and I do what I call process optimization, which is just a fancier word for saying test consultant. I think a lot about the topics of how we can kind of have a bit more fun or improve things or make what we do a little bit more tangible and salient to folks. And so this presentation was one that popped in my head during the last Agile testing days while I was listening to other presentations, which is always great inspiration, by the way. Anytime you're listening to a presentation, you get an idea, write that down because you never know. I'll talk a little bit more about the topic here in just a sec. But in general, I just like to talk to people, listen to ideas, and then see if we can bring them together to create something cool.
So thanks so much for being there. So it's your time, your sole time. I will put you or your presentation in the front, and I will go to the back. Okay. See you later.
All righty. Sure. Thank you. There it is. All right. So welcome. My presentation today is called "We Are the Testers. You Will Be Assimilated." It's a play on Star Trek. For those of you who don't know, there's a famous slogan from one of the species on there called the Borg. They say, "We are the testers. We are the Borg. You will be assimilated." And it's kind of seen as a bit of a threatening thing. I don't really mean it as more of a threatening thing, but I do want to think about what happens if we shake up how we see testing. So I want to talk about creating quality software by rethinking the way teams are set up. So this presentation is going to dive a little into a thought experiment on that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the setup as it is, the team setup as it is. I'm also going to see why formatting doesn't work. But then we're going to talk about why the old setup isn't working for some people, why it's giving some trouble for others, why we would want to ditch maybe the old way of doing things. Then we're going to talk about a new kind of setup for teams of how to create software teams. I'll give you some tips on creating this and some things you might need to do in order for it to work. And then talk a little bit about why it matters. You know, what kind of roles would be in this new setup and why would people want it? And then in the end, I also want to talk about what this new setup gives. Like what is the real value that we're getting out of this besides just taking a look at things that aren't working? So also take a look at what it can add. And in the end, I hope to have assimilated all of you into my way of thinking, and we can move forward onto new and brighter things. So to start off with, right now, most teams have a setup that looks similar to this. You have an inbound stream where change requests come in, and that's from a product owner, a business analyst might do some interpretation. You might have some design folks, some UX folks, whatever it does, they get together, they create these requests for changes, and they end up on a backlog. A production team of 3 or 4 developers, they pick them up. Usually as a tester, you're still involved in some estimation, hopefully. And then they build stuff, and then you alone, or maybe if you're lucky, you and one other tester get together and try to protect the quality of the system from the changes that are being made, and also examine what's been made to make sure that it does what we want it to do. You also have the Scrum Master in there that also protects the quality of the processes of that team if you're working Agile, but we want to single in on the tester side of this today. This is one that I think most people will recognize. It's one that has been around for, I think, as long as software development teams have existed, or at least as long as testers have existed as a discipline, as a part of that. So this is one that is almost gospel and is often not questioned. which is why we're going to question it. So my questions on here are numerous. So for one, I find that this setup doesn't work because the workload is extremely uneven. It's at best 2 to 1, and most of the time it's about 4 to 1. You get 4 times the items made, and you have about 25% of your time on each to actually study them, to explore them, to run tests on them, to explore the impact of them, to look at what it does to the rest of the system. It doesn't really leave a lot of space for deeper inspections. Now, some teams are really, really good at being efficient with their time, and they can pull it off, and they can do all these tests. And yet I still feel like it's a lot of pressure to put on 1 or 2 people to do the inspection and the quality checks and to make sure it doesn't impact the system in a bad way and to make sure that everything runs well. At the same time, constantly more stuff is being created and constantly more stuff is being thrown at you to test, to make sure you test it. And of course, if you're too slow, then everybody blames you that things don't go live. So I think the workload is extremely uneven in this setup. Secondly, there's no real attention paid to how we test, just as long as we get stuff done. And I found that to my dissatisfaction, a lot of times I didn't even have to put a lot of work in for it to be accepted as tested. And I don't feel good about that. I think that if I can say something's tested, it means I've really taken a deep dive look into it, that I've really managed to check out why this thing has changed and what it's changed and what things can we do with it and what are the potentials that we might not even have thought of on these. And we also kind of lose track of what we do with the results. I don't know about you, but there's quite a few times I've written a test report or recorded my findings only to see nothing really be done with them. So I want to draw attention to the fact that when you're alone in that team, sometimes you don't really get the attention paid to how you test. Then there's the fact that testing in this case is reactive. Somebody builds stuff and then we test. It's reliant on development being done. A lot of people struggle with shifting left and being a part of the design or even the request phase. And so the testing tends to follow the development mindset. So we want to build something, we want to get it to production. Where I think testing has its best value is in being an independent inspector that's not so much concerned about going live. And that's, to me, one of the most important things about being a tester is that you are probably one of the only people in the entire chain that is not as much concerned with something going live as you are with making sure that your system stays high quality. So that's a unique perspective that I don't want to get lost in this. And I think it's in danger of getting lost. It also means there's wait times. A lot of times a tester might find they don't really have anything salient to do. They can do other stuff, but it's not so well structured in a lot of teams. And so that timing is very dependent on development progress, and development is dependent on the test capacity to be able to actually run the tests. So everybody's waiting for everybody else. And then you get slow time to market because the test processes take time. You also find that if you keep running that same path, there's little or no exploration. At some point, you just are running the same tests over and over just to get it done, just to get something moving on. And while this can work for a lot of things that are well known or systems that are pretty robust, it still feels like going against the very concept of testing to tread the same path over and over and over again without asking a unique question, without asking, hey, this particular thing, how does this change the system in a way that I haven't asked before, or in a way that I can really fully understand how the system works with this new change? So I find that a lot of times, even if I find something being exploratory, development's going to be like, no, we just built the thing. Let's just keep it simple. So there's not a lot of room for exploration. There's also high instability in the system because you're changing it rapidly. You're doing 4 times as much changes as you are doing quality protection. And I tend to find it has low coverage because you're just one person and you have to cover everything in the system that's being changed. So when you have that many changes to the system without enough time to check the impact, and when you're doing coverage just based on priority, you miss the things that slip through the little cracks, and that grows exponentially. Because the more of the little things you miss, the more the little things start to stack up, and before you know it, you've got a big problem. So I find that if you're just by yourself, you don't have time to go back and check all the stuff that was lower priority. And lastly, it creates what I call the quality hero syndrome. It's a little bit of a quick pitch for my talk this year at Agile Testing Days. This is a pressure that's often self-inflicted on testers. We take all of the idea of quality and we put it on ourselves. We say, we're the guardians of quality. We're the ones who get to make sure that quality is fine. And yeah, basically it's too much. And there's no way one person can handle all that, no matter how good they get. And it also is stealing from the rest of your team the ability to really think about quality and play a role there. And when you just focus on production over quality as a team, then you are, in essence, creating that lonely tester situation, that lonely quality hero. So it creates this kind of feedback loop that I don't think is very healthy. So those are all the things that I think aren't working right now. And if you want to just do the too long didn't read version of that, basically testing as a discipline is too full to do with one person while all this other stuff is being built. And right now, that again is that gospel setup of a team. So my thought experiment turns it on its head. Because we've got all these different testing requirements, right? This is all the different things we as testers are sometimes required to do. Mostly we're required to do all of these things. Sometimes you can get away with not doing all of them, but it's quite a lot. And it's from all different areas, from having some knowledge of programming to having good communication skills, to understanding the process dynamics, to understanding the general quality criteria. It's a lot on our plate, and we have to use all of that to design our tests. And at the same time, we also have a lot of activities to do. We have to inspect the requests, define metrics, we have to run test scripts, we have to prepare logging, we have to do functional change analysis, security testing, system regression testing, create good data sets, create good test runs. Just looking at the sheer number of tasks here, and this isn't even all of it, how can one person do that and still do a good job with all these changes coming their way? It just does not seem very realistic to me. So for me, when you look at those tasks, these ones back here, I see four kind of tester types emerge out of this. So you get the tester types that enable things. You get the tester types that optimize testing. You get the testing types that build the actual ability to run a test. And you get the testing type that teaches or that explains our findings. And in that, you can kind of start to see the formation of four different roles in there. A test designer that is a requirement specialist, a test processor as an execution specialist, a test analyst as an interpretation specialist, and of course, a test engineer who is a programming specialist. And by programming, I don't just mean the code to change, I also mean the code to build good scripts, to get good validation scripts, to do automation. So all of these types kind of encompass all the different actions and activities that we stated back here. But again, that all has to be in one person. So in this new format, I'm going to flip it on its head. I'm going to say that we're still going to keep our inbound stream, product owner, business analyst, going to do their thing, but we're going to make sure that the production team is just one or two developers in the team. They are going to build whatever's been asked, and it's just going to be one or two of them that are building whatever's been asked and moving it on to the inspection phase, because we're going to do a test-focused software development. And to do that well, you need a test architect, you need a test engineer, you need a test analyst, and you need what I call a test enhancement specialist. So we're going to go through those, and I'll show you what it means to add those to a team rather than have the shift be the old way. So in an integrated quality team, wow, my formatting got really screwed up here. Sorry about that. You're going to see a lot of things about transparency, insight, knowledge, stability, quality. These are all the things we're trying to draw out of an examination of the system. So we want to increase transparency. We want to give more ability to have insight. We want to increase the knowledge of the system. We want to make sure that the system being changed is still stable. And we want to make sure that whatever enters the system remains at the quality that we expect from the system. So those are the primary missions of this integrated quality team. The roles, as I pointed those four above, it's kind of based on the kind of work that you want to do as a tester. Now, I know as a tester myself, I like to do all of those roles above there, but there are some things I lean a bit more towards. Like I'm more partial to enhancing testing than I am to programming for test automation, for example. So for me, this would also help me create a role for the work that I want to do. And it also creates a role based on, well, maybe just my kind of personality or the kind of things I like to produce or the things that I do produce. And it also creates roles with distinct activities. I, as a enhancement specialist, for example, will probably be focusing on finding ways to make the way we do testing, the way we share insights, the way we log things, whatever, to make all those things clearer and better. Whereas somebody focusing more on the programming aspect would look at making our testing more efficient, for example. How can we test faster? How can we make sure that we get the right areas that we're looking into? But that means that with these roles, they also have unique values coming out of them. My value as an enhancement specialist might be that testing as an activity in general improves, whereas the engineer's value would be that the tests get more efficient, get run faster, are available to more people. A test analyst creates value by communicating the results of those tests on and doing a good analysis of what we found. And then, of course, an architect, if we don't have an environment and a good data set and a good surrounding, well, our tests aren't going to be that great anyway. So starting on that architect again, you might like this design track if you enjoy setting up things, like if like dominoes, you want to set it all up and then knock it over and see what happens. You like helping people do better work, but you do that from like an enablement perspective. And you find yourself talking to other users and disciplines a lot because you want to share how you work, how people work in one environment versus the other. And in terms of production, well, you like designing tests. You like making the format, the frameworks for it. You like to control the environment to make sure that it has the information you need, the connections you need, any tokens that you want to set up, those sorts of things. And you like to give clear goals for testing. That you're the big picture person. It's not a particular test, it's all of testing that you want to design something for. So in this role, you'll do things like risk analysis, mitigation strategy, requirements analysis. You'll communicate user desires and needs and set up the clear metrics for that. You'll control and configure the test environments. We want to pull that into the team rather than have it be some nebulous team that we need to call whenever there's trouble. You'll also be the person who is going to be acquiring and controlling and configuring test data. So that includes things like masking from production data, imports, data refreshes, that sort of things. And you'll use that to set up and control the environment configurations. We also design criteria for what items needs which test and on which level. So that actually gives you a little bit of a taste of test management even. Figuring out exactly where things work the best because you're the specialist in this. This is your area. Then you've got the builder, the test engineer. You prefer the physical over the theoretical. The design person can come up with it, but you really want to talk about what you can actually do with it. You want to watch things happen. You like shiny new tech toys. Anytime you go into an expo, you're like, yeah, show me all the new programs and tools and robots and AI and all that good stuff. And you have an affinity for development. It's not necessarily that you are a developer, but you like that world. You like building a script and seeing what it does. And then you can integrate those with release pipelines. You know enough technically to be able to do the technical work there. And you can build frameworks and configure tools instead of just taking like a YouTube course and then all of a sudden being dependent on a commercial tool, for example. You know the nitty gritty of it. You like to get into it. So in that role, you're basically going to be doing pseudocode review, manual scripting, automation scripting, creating frameworks, creating the testing tools that you use, applying the tooling to the software development testing cycle. You decide where the tools will be best placed, and you can integrate those results and actions into pipelines, into the rest of the system. So you're a pretty techie person in this role. So if you consider yourself a tech-minded tester, this might be one of the roles for you. Then you've got the teacher track. This is the test analyst. You really like learning. You like learning about the system. You like seeing the results of a test. You like helping other people learn. You want to show them the cool thing you found. And you're communicative. You like talking about what people found in testing. You like talking about how the system acts, which means that you do a thorough analysis of the results. You are the person who, once the test is done, you're the person who wants to dive into all that data and figure out all the stuff that came out of it. You support your team with that information. You make sure that everybody has the information they need. In a way, this is probably sounding like a classical test profile, but this is giving you the room to do that to your heart's content. And then you create specific audience-specific reports. So you're not just creating a test result document, but you're thinking about who needs to know what is valuable for them to know it and why. And so in the teacher track, you're basically designing, you're doing the design versus build comparison. What was designed, what was built, what does that say? You're doing logging, the setup to that, as well as the analysis of it. You're doing non-functional and functional test result analysis, the basic stuff of testing, regression analysis. You are the primary contact in your team for findings. You're the person who has all the information. You're the encyclopedia, the single point of truth, if you really want to get egotistical. And you work with developers to when you find bugs. So you found them, you make sure they get to the people who actually need to fix them. And lastly, you create a prioritized test result communication plan. Again, a little taste of test management here. You're going to make sure that the people who need to know things know them and get the information they need. And lastly, you've got the enhancement specialist, the optimization track. Personality types here, you're not easily bored doing the same thing slightly differently. You like following the same track and seeing what happens if I push B or A. If you're a video game player, you constantly restart the level because you learned something new and you want to try that out, basically. You like to tinker and see how it works. And you're not afraid to challenge the status quo, which, again, might tip you off as to which one of these types I am, and that I'm challenging the status quo of the entire team setup. You're not really concerned with producing. You don't want, it's not that you don't want things to go live, but you would rather focus on how things are built, how things are tested, how teams are able to work together. You're almost getting close to being like an agile coach or a scrum master in that aspect. But you come at it from a quality mindset. You like enhancing over building something new. Somebody builds it, you like to see what creative ways you can use it for, or how to make it just slightly better. You tweak it again. And you always want things to work better. It's never going to be good enough, which doesn't mean that it's low quality. It just means that there's always something tugging you to think, ooh, what more can we get out of this? So what do you do here as an optimizer? Well, you make sure that the acceptance criteria is really refined so that people are getting exactly what they asked for and that we can use that to create good tests. You help to do test run design, like what tests should run together, what ones should run separately, what happens when you get a concurrency issue. You got all these things that you can look into. You do verification checkpoint setups. Instead of focusing a lot of repeat tests, people still do manually. You'll help to make that an automated strategy. You can work on test script refinements. Once the script has been made by the engineer, you can look over it and see if you can spot new things in there or maybe make it consolidated, that sort of thing. You do automation enhancements. Trust me, you can always consolidate it, always make it a little bit better. And you're doing lots and lots of research into new tech. So you're probably palling around with the engineer a lot on this one because you want to know what's the possibilities. What can you do? What's exciting in the world? So you've got these 4 roles, right? And you really want to make sure that you can use these roles to get stuff done. So the architect is a design specialist, creates the structures that are needed for good quality investigation. The enhancement specialist is an all-around optimizer. They also parts of the software development cycle, they optimize that as well. So they're always looking to make it better. You've got the analyst, who is learning and knowledge transfer specialist to make sure the information goes to the right place. And you've got the engineer who's building the stuff, who's making sure that we've got the tools and setups and frameworks necessary for us to do our actual testing and for people to be able to see those results. So each of these roles independently does a lot of actions, but that also means each of these roles also have a particular value. So a test architect, that role allows us to get a deep understanding of the system under test because, again, they need to know how the system works to design the right space for it. They also create stable structures that you can trust. No more flaky tests. No more wondering if your test failed because it was a bad environment connection or because of something actually in the program that changed. And they are always there to make sure you've got up-to-date data that reflects production, that the structures that you're testing against are actually going to tell you something about what's going to go to production. And then you've got the enhancement specialists. They're continuously creating faster and more accurate tests. It's all about making it better, all about making it nicer. Their quick response to production issues. These are the people you send to a root cause analysis because they're gonna tinker and pull everything apart just to see what exactly went wrong. They also improve coordination with other disciplines because they're always going to try to build bridges or borrow from another discipline and figure out how that works. The test analyst creates the deep understanding of the changes to the system. So again, the architect understands the system. The analyst understands what changed. They create useful and actionable reports that go to the right people, and they basically protect the value. So these are the people who make sure that the right people get the right information, that the value of testing is protected because it's going somewhere. And again, last but not least, you get the test engineer. They create highly effective and consolidated scripts. They are using the best tech knowledge they know to make it better. They work together with the enhancement specialists, the design versus the execution. They save time with well-maintained automation. This is not just an automation that gets done on the side by that lone tester trying to do all the other stuff. You've got a dedicated person doing that. And they also create refined and well-applied tools and frameworks. And because of them, you have an ability to do all the other roles much better and much faster. And they'll enable people to do that, even non-testers. So what does the new setup give? Well, it cleans up those issues. The workload reduction, it happens. So you get a delivery that's more focused on on quality. So you're doing more inspection than you are actually doing building, which means you're going to have a deeper knowledge of the tests that you do and a deeper knowledge of the risks and the values that come out of it. You're doing proactive inspection. The focus is on the system being useful and stable rather than the focus being on, hey, I changed something. You want to make sure that the end product, the thing that people are already using and probably want to continue to use, keeps being useful. You're no longer waiting for development to finish. You're shifting things left. You've got dynamic testing outside of the usual path. You're not just treading the same path over and over. You've got better system knowledge and coverage because you've got people dedicated to that. And you're no longer alone in caring for and investigating quality. This is no longer just your little thing and you're the quality hero and nobody listens to you and you cry because your logs don't get changed. These are all the issues that we named before. But it's not just that. It also gives us the ability to expand our test types. We're no longer limited to the quick tests to validate that we need to keep up with that workload. And we can test much deeper because we've got the test support structures to do so. We trust our environments, we trust our data, we trust our scripts. And so our testing can go a lot deeper and a lot faster, and we can do it again and again. So all these things really do help to make things better. You also have skill and knowledge development, because when you're always finding better ways to test, you're finding better ways to develop as well. You're going to get rapid feedback. Developers are going to see that and also have the time and room to improve on their side because, again, we're now doing a whole lot of work here. Now they can also take some time to enhance their developing. It also means you're learning more about how the system is rather than how we think it is, because that's always going to be a question. Is the system actually the system we think it is, or is it different? And good testing, deep testing allows us to really see where those two things differ. And it means we're always available to share that knowledge in a structured way. A lot of times, if a tester is really busy doing their thing and you want to know something about the system, you can ask and you can find a tester who is going to basically work themselves to the bone to make sure they get that. Or in this new structure, you have a test analyst whose single job is to make sure you know that, is to make sure it gets to the right people. You also reduce key person risk, which is ironic considering I just was talking about the value of having 4 different specialists. But these are specialists within the same domain. It's a lot easier to be T-shaped when you are T-shaped over things that are in your area. Like you're a tester, so of course you know a little bit about test engineering. Of course you know a little bit about test architecture and environments, what you need. Of course you know about communication. Of course you know about enhancement. So all these things are still roles that can be fulfilled in between people, even though it's nice to have a specialist in it. It also means it's easier to schedule. A tester can actually go on vacation, which leads to much better team dynamics when you don't just have that one person who knows how to test is gone. Because I live in the Netherlands, people go on vacations for 5 weeks here sometimes, and that can be a real drag on a team that otherwise doesn't really have any testing knowledge. And it also means we have more shared knowledge. It doesn't just stay with one person. This is a team dynamic. And when you've got 4 people talking in a team about something, it's bound to spread to the rest of the team as well. So again, no hoarding quality. You also focus what I like to call quality-focused development, which is not the same as test-driven development, because we're not focusing on the method. Production becomes about having stable, well-understood systems, rather than about having new stuff delivered all the time. We are still delivering new stuff. But again, the focus of our teams is to make sure that we don't mess things up, that we make sure things run well, that the changes that are added to it enhance it without taking it down. It's basically regression testing, but the focus of it is going to be on having a stable system. The changes are also going to be much better understood. So anything that's changed is not going to bite us in the butt 2 years down the road, because we'll have explored those thoroughly. They're well defined, they have got an explored purpose, and we know what they're doing and how they're being set up. So again, it's not about the method, it's not that we're testing, it's that the results of the tests are focused on having a stable and quality production, no matter what we do to it. So let's take a look at some of the tips, and then we'll go to the last point. When you do this, you're going to have to itemize the risk space per role. It's not good enough now just to say, hey, these are the risks, we're going to create tests. Specific roles can pick up specific risks in a much more structured way. An architect, for example, can see the risks to an environment. Oh, maybe we need to have this data. Oh, maybe this connection that we don't have yet needs to be mocked before we can do a good test. We want to make sure that we've got the right load or performance stats for these things. And again, every role has a different role, ironically, to play in these risks. The complexity, different system levels, even possible improvements aren't usually in scope, but in this case they can be. So you can actually include them in the risks and the values. This allows all the above to be part of that, but again, you have to assign that ahead of time. So this has to be an active thing. Itemize those risks, divvy them up between the four of you, and make sure that everybody knows what their role is in covering them. You should also then create a test improvement backlog. That enhancement specialist isn't going to keep it all to themselves. They're going to make sure that we know everything that we need to do to improve the process of inspection. So again, the focus is now quality rather than just production. You keep track of and you measure those improvements. You do insights on those. You're doing insights into your insights so that you can make sure that you're doing something useful, that you are actually improving things for the system, for the insights, for the knowledge. And it should be equally as important as the production backlog, because knowing about your system and knowing the impacts of what you do should be at least as important as making changes to it. You should also challenge and investigate system knowledge. This I alluded to a little bit earlier. The system that's in place isn't always the system that's in place. So you could have somebody who's worked there for 20 years and they think they know how the system works, but it doesn't actually work the way they think it works because nobody bothered to challenge it. This has happened to me pretty much in every single organization that I have worked in, that some part of the system didn't work the way that everybody thought they worked, that everybody had written how they worked, because small changes happen and then things get different. And then you migrate to an entirely different environment or tool and you realize that half the functions haven't been accounted for. That actually happened and it was a disaster. So again, challenge that. Test using the real situation is always going to be far more effective than using what people assume is the situation. And having the space to do that in this new setup, why not do it? Why not make that a regular part of your testing work? So the coverage improves significantly when you understand the system, and that coverage will be based on real tests that we do rather than just design documents that were probably created years ago. That also means that you've got to help with creating those documents, create flow maps, create component maps, make them live, make living documentation. The more visual you can make it, the better, because people really respond to that. You can teach people a lot better with that. You can show exactly where in the flow is the biggest risk, or you can show exactly where the impacts are. You can show where blind spots have been in the past, where maybe we don't have any tests covering these things. And it makes the system far more tangible for other people when you can show them something, rather than you just say, oh yeah, no, we've got 20% coverage here, 40% coverage. Show them how the system looks, make it red, make it green. I know Paul Holland has a great presentation on this. You can just take a look at how these things are visualized and it will really help. So that's a big tip for you if you get into this setup and situation. That leads into making the value of testing tangible. You really want to make sure that people know why we're doing any of this. Testing is often set aside because, well, we just don't take ourselves seriously. And I know that it's a big claim to make, but if we really did take ourselves seriously, we would be telling people why we're doing our work. We would be pushing for it. If we're shoved to the side, which we are as a single person in a team, if there is 4 to 5 developers and you're a single tester, You've been pushed aside because people don't think your work is as important as having all this new stuff in production. But it is. So we have to make it tangible. We have to stand up for it. And we need to talk money. We need to talk in terms that people who are paying for this stuff will understand. What are we providing? What is the role of a test architect providing in terms of money? What are people who are focusing on building better scripts and tooling? What are they saving us? Figure this out. Do some calculations. There are presentations about this. I've created a workshop about this. Other people have done it too. You can do this, and it's important that you do this, because if you don't, this whole experiment of creating 4 testers when right now some organizations barely even spring for 1, it's probably going to flop. So we need to be ready to share, and we need to share amongst ourselves. We need to help each other to make sure the value of testing is well known. Make this a community effort. So how do we assimilate? Well, it is time to rethink how we make software. And why do we make it? We want to make a change so that somebody can use it to do something that's valuable for them. That means that we want to focus on how they're going to use it and how the system is going to continue to be used at the same time. That needs attention. It's time to fight for sustainable systems, not just systems that we can continuously throw new things at and change it all the time. We want to create things that last. We want to create things that have a good stability to them. Sure, we want it to be flexible, but we also want it to be nice, you know? We don't want something that breaks every couple of weeks so that we have to do another series of patches. And it's time to include people in that quest, in our quest for a more perfect system. Not for a perfect one, but for a more perfect system. Right now, we might be the only people carrying that flag. I don't think that that's a good start to assimilating people into this. Let's start with that. Let's get everybody involved in this so that they understand how important it is. And hey, who knows? You might be able to convert a developer onto our side, make him a test engineer. So it's time to let go of the lone hero, the Lone Ranger hero thing. It's just not working. We need to get rid of that idea. And it's time to flip the ratio, because I truly think that if we do this, we're going to find that we're still able to bring things quickly into production, that we're still going to be able to bring a lot of changes into production, but we are going to make sure that we've got the insights, the knowledge of the system, and, well, the value to the right people that you can really only bring with insight. So it's time for us to help others see what we see and do what we do, and thus assimilate them. We are the testers, and we're going to get it done right. So I hope that was fairly convincing. I've been moving steadily this way as the sun has been frying me more and more.
It was wonderful. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. No, I see you are now in the sun, so
yeah,
giving you a hard time. Giving you a hard time. So it was wonderful, and I think that, in my opinion, it's a very good idea, and it could be great. Could be great if you could write an article on that for testing experience.
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I like it very much, and I think that so I mean, I had a discussion or a talk I think 2 weeks ago with Manu Quinn from US, and his opinion that we will need more testers than developers in the short run.
Hey, already got a convert.
Yes, because he's the opinion that with AI you are going to produce a lot of new software.
A lot of new code
with the developers. There's more output there, but even using AI for testing, he's the opinion that we will need more and more testers, even because the software coming from AI maybe need more more support to get it right. I don't know. So I think this is interesting, and because I mean, you are not based on this of the thing about AI. You are based on how we are working today.
Yeah.
And I am the opinion with you. So I think what we need to discuss is the other part. For example, if we see, okay, if you have only 2 developers, let's say that, and you have 5 testers, how much pressure is on the developers?
Yeah, I actually thought about that while I was designing the flip. Like right now, we feel that pressure as testers because
I
there's a
know.
lot of stuff coming towards us.
Yeah.
Would it also work the other way around? Would we pressure them? Come on, deliver something so I can test it. And I think that by and large, we're not going to do that same kind of pressure because most testers that I know would love to have another week to test something that comes through. Because there's always more we can do. And I think right now, if I was to throw random statistics, because 47% of all statistics are made up on the spot, I'd say we have about maybe 20% of the tests that we want to do done at any particular change, which means there's a whole lot of other tests that we'd really like to do, but we don't have the time. So I think that, especially in the beginning, we're gonna just be like, you guys go on vacation. We're just gonna take what you built and we're just gonna go to town on all of this, improving the way we do things, the structures, the communication chains, the visualizations, the knowledge of the system, and then we'll get back to you and get some more changes in. So no, I don't think the pressure would be the same. I think we have a different motivation. Developers want to build something and they want to see that thing that they built be used. And testers, we want to inspect things, and we've got plenty of things to inspect. So yeah,
that's nice. Thanks so much. So I don't know if I think we don't have any questions there. So there's no questions. Thanks so much, Ricky. Thanks so much for being there. It was a great presentation. I like very much. I think that it makes sense based on where you're saying. And I think we maybe need to talk about that at the Agile Testing Days and see if we could find a company that want to try that, because I think this is worth to try and see what can I get. Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I do have one question, Jose. Where is this film going to be posted so that maybe I can show up and answer some questions?
Now is in LinkedIn.
Got it.
So it's in LinkedIn all the time, and we will download that and we will put also in YouTube, so that in our channel, so that the people can see also there the talk. Thanks so much. It was a great talk. Okay.
Thanks, Jose. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a good one.
You too. Thanks so much. So, my dears, time is gone. Thanks so much for being there. Be aware that we are going to have next week also 1 or 2 AgileTD After Work, but also Pepe's Bar. So I hope to see you there. Thanks so much for attending, and see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.